Today's question: is Oppenheimer a historical epic, or will this one blow up in Nolan's face?
Did somebody say boom?
What's up, Flick fans? Welcome back to the channel. You know what this is. Today we're talking Oppenheimer. Before I get into my review, here's my first reaction out of the theater with John the Flick Pick and my brother.
Here's some quick thoughts out of Oppenheimer. Our minds exploded. The theater, I don't think we're still here. John the Flick Pick, what did you think, my friend?
This is one Hollywood bomb at the cinema that you should see.
Oh, I like the way you put that. My brother, Josh, what did you think, man?
They blew up the Barbie dream house.
That is not the right movie. Again, John, I had some high expectations going into this film, man.
Yeah.
I love Christopher Nolan, but the last few movies, like you said, they just haven't been as great, as amazing as the rest of his filmography. Maybe, right? For me, even though this is a pure character piece, this is it's what you sign up for, essentially, with that one amazing moment in the middle. That worked, and it worked on a level that maybe I didn't even expect.
No, if you're a fan of Nolan, you get all those Nolan-esque tropes in this film, the non-linear storytelling, the bombastic sounds. But this time you can hear the dialogue between characters, which was awesome. I quite enjoyed that. But I think this is the best of Nolan with the subdued version of Nolan we've needed in Hollywood for a long time. You know, we sort of lost it with Interstellar, and I feel like now it's coming back around, and I really did appreciate it. And going into this film, what did I tell you? I was like, I have a feeling this will be like a 4 out of 5, but
Yeah.
I would go so far as to say it's like 4.5 out of 5.
Sure.
And the only reason I say that is maybe the rewatchability. It's going to take me maybe a year or two to go back and revisit this, but not to say I didn't enjoy the cinematic experience, especially in 70mm IMAX.
Oh, it's a very distinct experience. This is one of those movies that you can't replicate because we've seen historical films before. I made a Mank comparison going into this movie, and Mank for me was a film that delivered what it said it was going to, but it didn't do anything extra, and it didn't feel like a film in that director's filmography that stands out. This, to me, stands out in Nolan's filmography. This is different. We may not ever get anything like this again from Christopher Nolan, and I'm way more interested. And not that I wasn't interested before, I just didn't know what I knew coming out of the theater. And again, with the color scenes, the black and white scenes, and the way that they distinguish that from the different viewpoints, the performances from Robert Downey Jr., Cillian Murphy, and we'll get into all of this in the full review, but I was really blown away by the performances, and I think there's some Oscar potential with this film. John, before I send it over to me, what's your final thoughts?
Blown away by the performances.
He knows what I'm doing.
Best performance by Cillian Murphy by far, and I would say, and in the words of Robert Downey himself, I would say this is probably his best movie. Sorry, Avengers Endgame. I mean, hey, a historical epic, I'm a fan of.
And I think it may just be Robert Downey Jr.'s opportunity to win. And I'm not saying nomination, I'm saying win an Oscar. Josh, you seen this movie again?
I'm sorry, Ken.
He's sorry, Ken.
After a good night's sleep, I have some thoughts I want to expand on. But first, in case you're curious, this movie is rated R. There is sexuality, nudity, and language. It's Christopher Nolan's dirtiest film, so if you like that, you're going to love it. And because of that, it may not be the best family movie, but in general, it may not be the best family movie, one that you want to take the younger kids to, because this is a historical epic. This is telling the story of someone who means a lot to history and a moment in time that was so big, honestly, so big that I didn't even comprehend going into this film how monumental of a moment in history that this was, and learning more about this character in Oppenheimer and really all the characters that we'll dive into here in just a second. It was fascinating. Not even looking at the movie itself and the experience, the information was fascinating.
Interesting.
And the beautiful thing about this film is that Nolan's not looking at one character or one scene and saying, this is what you're supposed to believe. We're seeing it through this perspective, so you have to agree or disagree. This feels like a very unbiased movie, and obviously he's pushing something that comes more prevalent towards the end, but it's not something that's going to sway you in one character's direction or the other. We're getting the facts, at least what it seems like from the outside looking in, but we're also getting some perspective of Robert J. Oppenheimer, or Louis Strauss. And this has been mentioned multiple times. It's not a spoiler. It's something that everyone has brought up. And it helped me a lot with the movie itself. I would have figured it out, but knowing it going in, I think added something to what this film is, and that is the black and white scenes and the scenes that are in color. And it's Christopher Nolan. You know it's not going to be in order. It's not going to be so simple that you're like, yeah, I followed that very clearly and I had no issues whatsoever. I believe that's the case for most of the movie, but there is a 35-minute span at the end where we are going in so many different directions and so many different perspectives. It did start to feel just a little jumbled and a little all over the place, but not in a bad way. And it was the fact that we were 2 hours and 30 minutes in, and I had to pee so bad.
You what?
But the black and white scenes are from the perspective of Robert Downey Jr.'s character. The scenes in color are from the perspective of Cillian Murphy's character, Louis Strauss and Robert J. Oppenheimer. So two completely and drastically different looks at how characters feel about the exact same situation. And because it jumps to so many different places in that final 30 minutes, my only real hesitation with the story, the narrative itself, is how Downey's presence, not as an actor, but as a character, feels so much more important in the final few scenes compared to the rest of the movie, because the rest of the movie we're dealing with another set of characters, and we kind of take a break from that side of things for a long period of time, to where when we come back, that's such a heavy focus, and there's still about 30 minutes left in this movie when you think you're wrapping up, and I feel like, you know, some general audience members are going to be watching this, and they're going to say, I just think this movie's too long because of that. But that's me getting my real criticisms out of the way, and I guess there's a 20-minute span at the beginning when we're building up who Oppenheimer is, to where it also feels a little jumbled, not as focused, but I didn't have a huge problem with it as it was going. But I look at that and its strength compared to the rest of the movie, and the rest of the movie is so much stronger. But for 2 hours and 20 minutes of this film, I wasn't just on the edge of my seat. I wasn't just sitting back with my jaw on the floor. I was mesmerized by not only the visuals, not only the score, which is one of the best we've ever got from Göransson, but the performances and the story. This is Nolan's strongest story maybe he has ever done. Not the most interesting, not the craziest, not even the most entertaining, but from a writing standpoint, the dialogue is stronger than it has ever been, and I was enamored by the conversations. Not slightly invested, not like, oh yeah, this is pretty interesting, but it's historical and I'm not a big history buff. No, I was enamored by the dialogue, folks. This is an incredibly written movie. I have seen, and I didn't come up with this, I saw someone on Twitter, actually two people, compare it to The Social Network for David Fincher. That's right.
Oh my God!
And while it's a very different story and a very different focus, I see what they're saying, because those conversations, that dialogue is so riveting. It's so back and forth. It's so fast-paced. You don't have time to breathe. And it's a 3-hour movie, right? You expect there to be action, there to be suspense, and there is suspense, but it's built through the conversation. So if you don't like talky movies, but not in the way that I believe, and I made this comparison in my reaction, you go into David Fincher's Mank and you want to learn about history, but you also want to be riveted. And I learned a lot through Mank, and I thought it was a well-directed movie, but I wasn't riveted. I wasn't, on the edge of my seat. With this film, I think a lot of it has to do with the editing. We will have these very abrupt cuts while two characters are talking, and we'll show a visual, or we'll show what another character is doing, or we'll show a close-up, or there are some, visual effects used in this film to where they make things feel uncomfortable, and they allow you to see even more so how Oppenheimer is feeling in that moment. And those, to me, are the most impactful moments of the movie. And the way that Nolan does this through camera techniques, through editing, through visual effects, through all of these things was really cool. I mean, it's one of the coolest things I've seen in a movie, and I could name multiple scenes that made me feel that way. One of the coolest things I've seen all year, and these moments are what makes this movie good. If we didn't have those incredibly edited scenes and edited moments, I don't think this movie would be as riveting as it was. Still great writing, but it's all of those factors coming together, and I mentioned Göransson's score. This is his best score. He did the score for Tenet, Mandalorian, Black Panther and Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and those scores are amazing. But this is an Oscar-worthy score. This, as of now, is going to win Best Score at the Oscars, guaranteed, hands down, in July, because that could change. Speaking of Oscars, Hoyt van Hoytema, the cinematographer, oh my God, man. And I've seen some people on Twitter saying, well, it's, you don't have to see it in IMAX because it's a lot of close-ups. Yes, right? But that allows you to feel what the character is feeling in that moment. And it's not just close-ups. There are more moments, and obviously they're building up to something big in this film. And the payoff for me was there. I do think the buildup was maybe more impressive than the payoff, and some people are going to take that as a negative, and I guess you could kind of take that as a negative for the moment, but the moment was still great, and it only works because of that buildup. I can't help that we've been talking about that for 6 months behind the scenes. I'm talking about what the movie provided, and it worked well, and the way that it all came about was crazy. Some people may expect more from that moment. I could see it as an issue, but it didn't bother me. And then also, just from first reactions, I saw the complaint of pacing. And I get the first 20-ish minutes of sort of a pacing problem, and then I get the final 35 minutes when you feel that the movie ends at the 2-hour, 30-minute mark, and it just keeps going. But I was so riveted by that dialogue and by the pacing in that moment. I didn't have a pacing issue there. It's just the fact that you think the movie's over and it keeps going, and that's going to have some people kind of twisting and turning in their seats, but he sucks you back in with the writing in this moment, so that didn't bother me. And truly, for 2 hours and like I said, 20 minutes of this film, I didn't feel a pacing issue at all, and frankly, I don't see that as a huge issue. But I was really riveted by the story. If you're not as invested as I was in this material, then I could see how a 3-hour movie is going to make you feel that way. And then finally, the performances. I could talk about Jack Quaid, I could talk about Josh Peck, and everyone's really good, even though they may not have the most screen time in the world. By the way, the Safdie brother in this, Benny Safdie and Kenneth Branagh are spectacular. Alden Ehrenreich is great in this film, shares a lot of moments with Robert Downey Jr. Oh, Robert Downey Jr., can I just say, I kind of want to call it right now. Can I call Robert Downey Jr. winning Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars? I mean, there are plenty of movies that I haven't seen, but as of now, from the movies that I have seen, he's going to win. He's going to win. Unless I see a performance that is... It has to do a lot, though, because what he did in this film, he's not playing Tony Stark. This is Robert Downey Jr. stretching every acting chop he has ever been blessed with. It's an incredible performance, a monumental.
I gotta tell you, it was perfect.
Matt Damon is great. He adds a little bit of a comedic relief in this film, and it's not an overly comedic movie. It's very serious, but you get those moments of levity, and they definitely help out. My goodness, Emily Blunt, she's amazing in this film. Best Supporting Actress, a nomination, I think is in the cards. Florence Pugh was great. Didn't have as much screen time as I wanted. I feel that way about other characters as well, but she was great. But the star of the show is Cillian Murphy. And this is maybe the best I've ever seen him. Look, we have Peaky Blinders. We have all of the other Nolan movies. It's genuinely hard to choose from as of this moment. But yeah, I'm fresh off the movie. This was amazing. It's going to be hard for him to win because he's in lead actor. But I expect a lot of acting nominations from this Nolan movie. And that doesn't happen that often. And finally, the man himself, Christopher Nolan. This is a film that he has never tackled anything like before. Dunkirk, I would say, is the most similar because it's a historical story, but this doesn't feel as unfocused as Dunkirk, which is a beautiful movie from a technical perspective, but this story feels so much more overall, and I felt as if I had more of an experience in the theater, even though it's less showy than any of the recent Nolan films. It's not Interstellar, it's not Inception, it's not The Dark Knight, with the action and the visual effects and the CGI and all of the stunts and all of those crazy things, and we get one massive moment like that and a few scenes that showcase what that is all about, and obviously the cinematography and score are amazing, but this is a much more simplified, scaled back, and independent feeling movie. It's the biggest feeling Oscar-type independent movie that I've ever seen in the theater. And it may be because I saw it in 70mm IMAX, but which helped. It was a beautiful experience. But yeah, I feel as if we'll never get anything like this from Nolan ever again. Also because of the length and because of the fact that it is a historical biopic, I don't know if the rewatchability for this one is nearly as high as Inception, Interstellar, those films, but just in general, I don't feel as if I'm going to watch this more than 2 to 3 times over the next 1 to 2 years because of all of those factors combined. Now, I do plan on going to see it again with my wife. She has to see this movie. All right, it's time for my score. If you guys enjoyed this video and you want to drop a like, that would be amazing. My Barbie review is happening tomorrow, and my Christopher Nolan ranking is happening. So what is your favorite Christopher Nolan film? Please leave those comments down below. Start that conversation. That would help this video, and I want to see what you guys have to say about that. Oppenheimer is an immersive and skillfully edited biopic that feels nothing short of monumental. This goes beyond Nolan showcasing a compelling character study as the visuals and score elevate every moment. Murphy is phenomenal, Blunt shines, and RDJ is coming for that Oscar. Because it's 3 hours and because it's a historical epic, not everyone is going to respond to this movie and this story as strongly as others, but I think we can all agree that it's at least a good big screen experience, even with some pacing issues. A few at the beginning, a few at the end, but those are really my only criticisms. And there's a thunder sound effect that sounded like a Final Cut sound effect. That's like the only problem I had with the middle of the movie. All right, thanks for watching. Tomorrow I'll be a Barbie girl in my Barbie world. Let's do it.